Have you ever seen someone humiliated in front of a crowd, only to rise in the very next moment and leave everyone stunned? This is not just another military story. This is a story about respect, rank, and what happens when arrogance meets justice. Stay with me till the very end, because what happened at that ceremony will make you believe that true power doesn't shout, it stands tall. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Grow for Justice, where we bring you stories that reveal courage, integrity, and truth. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I'd love to know how far our community reaches. The morning sun gleamed over the vast military parade ground. Flags waved proudly, brass instruments gleamed, and rows of soldiers stood in perfect formation. It was a special day, the Valor Recognition Ceremony, where the most distinguished officers were being honored for service beyond duty. Among them stood Captain Rebecca Hayes, dressed immaculately in her uniform, every medal shining like a fragment of her journey. She was young, too young, some whispered, for the honors she'd earned. But her eyes carried the depth of someone who had seen enough to know that bravery isn't measured by age. And standing just a few feet away was Major General Harris, a man known for his temper and pride. He had been in command for decades, and though decorated, he carried a bitterness toward anyone who rose faster than him in spirit or reputation. Especially someone like Rebecca. The crowd buzzed as the announcer read out names and citations. One by one, officers walked forward, received their medals, saluted, and stepped aside. But when Rebecca's name was called, the atmosphere changed. People clapped louder. Some even stood. She had led a rescue mission that saved 37 soldiers during a border ambush, and everyone knew she deserved this day. But not General Harris. He clenched his jaw as she stepped forward, her salute crisp and confident. Captain Rebecca Hayes, the announcer declared, is hereby recognized for exceptional courage under fire and leadership beyond expectation. Rebecca bowed slightly, receiving her medal from the commanding officer, Colonel Grant. The applause was thunderous, but as she turned to step back, Harris's voice cut through the air. "Captain Hayes." The ground went silent. Rebecca turned sharply, heels clicking. "Yes, sir." Harris's tone dripped with condescension. "You forgot your salute to the senior officer. Or did your pride make you forget your manners?" Gasps rippled through the ranks. Rebecca froze for a second. She had saluted, but perhaps he hadn't noticed amid the noise. Still, she raised her hand again, steady, respectful. "Apologies, sir." But Harris wasn't done. He stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel, his face inches from hers. "You think medals make you superior, Captain? You think saving a few soldiers puts you above protocol?" Colonel Grant's expression darkened, but he remained silent. The crowd held its breath. Harris's hand twitched, and in that brief moment, everyone could see it. He was about to strike her. Rebecca didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened, her posture unwavering. But before his hand moved, a deep voice thundered through the speakers. "Stand down, General Harris." All eyes turned toward the podium. Colonel Grant, the commanding officer, had stepped forward. His tone was iron, his gaze locked on Harris. "You will not touch that officer." Harris, red with fury, turned. She disrespected command in front of hundreds. Grant's voice remained cold. "No, General, you disrespected yourself. And before you make another mistake, perhaps you should check who outranks whom here." The crowd murmured in confusion. Rebecca's eyes flicked between the two men. She was still at attention, calm, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Grant reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a document. His voice echoed. "As of last week, by order of the Department of Defense and the Joint Chiefs, Captain Rebecca Hayes has been promoted directly to Colonel Rebecca Hayes, effective immediately for her leadership, her integrity, and her classified service during Operation Winter Dawn." The silence was deafening that Harris's face turned pale. "You promoted her?" Grant nodded. Not me. The defense secretary himself. You might have known if you attended the security briefings instead of sending subordinates. Rebecca stood motionless, processing what she just heard. Her heart pounded, not from pride but disbelief. Harris's hand, still hovering midair, slowly dropped to his side. Grant's voice grew colder. So, General, when you tried to strike her, you were about to assault a senior officer. Colonel Hayes outranks you now, in position and in honor. The crowd erupted in whispers. Some soldiers smiled quietly. Others stared in stunned silence. Harris stepped back, his arrogance crumbling. This is absurd, he shouted. Grant didn't blink. What's absurd, General, is forgetting that rank doesn't only come from years. It comes from merit, sacrifice, and the respect of those who follow. She earned hers. Can you say the same? The air was heavy with tension. Harris's reputation had carried fear for years, but now, fear shifted away from him. It no longer belonged to power. It belonged to truth. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice calm but steady. Sir, I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came to honor those who fought beside me. Respect is the only thing that makes a uniform worth wearing. Grant nodded approvingly. The soldiers in formation stood a little taller, pride swelling in their chests. For the first time in years, they saw justice play out in real time. Not behind closed doors, not in whispers, but in front of everyone. Harris tried to recover his posture, muttering something about reviewing the promotion. But Grant cut him off sharply. You'll do nothing of the sort. You'll report to headquarters pending inquiry into your conduct during today's ceremony. Dismissed. And just like that, the man who had once terrified subordinates walked away in silence, his authority collapsing with every step. After the ceremony ended, soldiers approached Rebecca quietly, one by one. Some saluted. Others simply whispered, "Ma'am, thank you." She smiled humbly, never one to bask in attention. Later that day, Colonel Grant called her into his office. The tone was much warmer now. "You handled that perfectly, Rebecca," he said. "I'm sorry you had to endure that public scene." Rebecca shook her head. "Sir, if it taught even one young officer that integrity matters more than intimidation, it was worth it." Grant smiled. "That's why you were promoted. Not just because you saved soldiers, but because you remind us what this uniform is supposed to mean." She left the office quietly, walking past the flags, past the rows of boots and medals, her heart steady. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a woman in the army, not as someone fighting for respect, but as a leader. Weeks later, a small video clip from the ceremony leaked online. It showed the exact moment when the general raised his hand, and the CO stopped him. It captured Grant's announcement and the wave of realization that swept across the crowd. The video went viral. People around the world praised her composure, her dignity, her courage to remain calm in the face of humiliation. Hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag Colonel Hayes. Hashtag Grow for Justice. Hashtag Respect Earned. Schools, cadets, and young officers began sharing her story as an example of how leadership isn't given. It's proven. When reporters asked her later how she felt during that moment, she smiled softly and said, "Outranking someone isn't about having higher stripes on your shoulder. It's about having stronger character beneath them." And with that, Colonel Rebecca Hayes walked away from the microphones, back into her duties, where the rank on her uniform finally matched the strength in her heart. And that, my friends, was the story of how one woman's calm in the face of arrogance restored respect to an entire institution. She didn't fight back with anger. She didn't shout. She stood tall, and the truth stood with her. If this story inspired you, make sure you subscribe to Grow for Justice, because we bring you stories that remind the world that strength comes from integrity, not intimidation. And now, I want to know, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, your city, your country, your story. Let's see how far the message of justice and respect travels today.